Everyone's an entitled bitch, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. If you don't practice what you preach, that opinion isn't gonna carry much weight. If it's a good opinion, well, maybe it will hold water merely on its own merit. The Constitution of the United States of America was a good fucking idea. The government that's supposed to uphold it was not. The government that was supposed to protect the American public from violations of our liberty and freedom was a fucking bad idea. Because they don't.
Voting doesn't work. Sending letters to your congressman doesn't work. What's the next option?
Schaeffer Cox was a man who did practice what he preached. He was a family man, an independent, and a patriot.
The next option is just exploring the wonderful power of disobedience. Just massive, massive disobedience.
It's important that Schaeffer Cox be heard, that he not be dismissed as some criminal, because he truly loved this country and the Constitution it stood for. He was a patriot, and he stood up for what was right. He did what most men are afraid to do. He stood up for what was right and stood against what was wrong. He stood up for every man and suffered for it.
People tend to equate government with law, that government and law are synonymous. And that is absolutely false. Law pre-existed government. It is not because of law that we have freedom. It is because of freedom that we have law. We had that freedom in the first place. And that is why individuals got together and created government to protect them. No government has a right to do what an individual does not have a right to do. Because all of us collectively cannot muster some sort of different moral code to be held to us as a body. Law is force, pure and simple. And the only time that the use of force is appropriate is in self-defense. Now, we as individuals can get together and delegate that force, that self-defense, that defensive force, to a government for the purpose of protecting our liberties. But it is totally irrational to think that we as individuals can delegate to a government something that we ourselves do not have, which is the right to arbitrarily aggress those that we choose. And that is what our government is doing.
And they're not stopping.
And they're not stopping.
Needless to say, they didn't like what he had to say. The oligarchical forces of big business that endorse our government didn't like the dissident speech that made sense, honestly. It made perfect sense, and that's why they didn't like it. It was dangerous to their continued profit. And they spied on him illegally. They used the Patriot Act to bug his phone conversations, and then they charged him with conspiracy to commit murder. The charges were trumped up and unfounded in reality. The so-called conspiracy was based on a phone conversation that the feds had illegally tapped and justified using the Patriot Act, which was unconstitutional. The Patriot Act in itself is just a bad idea and a violation of everything our country stands for.
And they're backing people into a corner. And nobody wants a fight. People are just peaceful by nature. You know, nobody wants a fight.
You can take the nicest dog in the world, and if you just keep being mean and scaring it and pushing it into a corner, it's probably going to bite you.
Yeah, if you tax us under the table, don't be surprised when we bite your balls. That's the truth of it.
I love that.
The so-called conspiracy was also implicit on they're doing wrong first. Not that they were going to go out there and target innocent citizens just doing their job. No. It was implicit on the government using force on its citizens for no just cause. And you cannot, it does not fit the criteria of conspiracy to commit murder. Conspiracy to commit murder is not implicit on something that hasn't happened. The finding of guilt is implicit of an admission of guilt on the government's part. The government had targeted citizens and was targeting citizens, and in the case of Schaeffer Cox, took him out of the game.
They'll take your sons and appoint them to his chariots. They'll take your daughters and he'll make them bakers. He'll take your vineyards away from you, and you will lose your farms and you'll lose your ass. Right out of the Bible.
Literally.
If you want a big government, you're going to lose your ass.
His ideas were good fucking ideas, and they think they validated his merit by taking him out of the game. But the ideas stand on their own, and they have feet on their own, and his movement has learned a very valuable lesson. The government's already taken ours. We shouldn't have waited.
We're talking about some pretty heavy stuff here, you know. And, you know, time to time throughout history, you know, a generation will be called upon to look at these, you know, difficult things in the eyes. But that's our duty, you know. We can't shirk that.
We've got to fight back, because the war is already afoot.
Legal or illegal, doesn't matter. We need to be thinking about right and wrong, not legal or illegal, because those are so far from the same.
No, this war that we are in is a coup against these citizens by the government that was elected to protect our freedom. This same government would take our freedom, rip it right out from underneath us like a fucking Houdini.
You were asking why, though, and I got an answer.
The government wants us all blind. It wants us all scared. It wants us all to shut up and do as we're told.
Yeah, the most important lesson to learn from history is that people don't learn from history. Just the knowledge that you hold doesn't really change your human nature. And I think that our human nature and our propensity towards that is so powerful that it just is rarely overcome by a mental assent to the factuality of the cycle. It has to run its course. Boo! Keep the lid on any revolutions. But you know what? Iceland 6 months ago, they inflated their currency. You know, they just got out of control, and that's one of the characteristics of politicians. They are out of control because they are addicted to exercising force arbitrarily over other people, and they're controlled by that addiction. And the tool to achieve force over other people is generally inflating the money supply, because if you control the purse, you control everything. Whoever writes the checks is king, and so that's how they become king. But they inflate it until it collapses.
And they're backed by big business, big pharma. They're backed by people's cowardice more than anything. People's cowardice, people's laziness, and people's love of money. The biggest thing backing our government is a private entity known as the Federal Reserve Bank.
Materialism, the abundance of things, and success being seen as the abundance of things, and to you know, praising that and worshiping that as the pinnacle of achievement is to be surrounded with material possessions, even if it's at the expense of moral and ethical character and fortitude.
Everything that makes us worthwhile, we've given up for some fucking paper with some dead guy's face on it that we use as a promissory note for a reserve that doesn't even have anything in it. It's all fake.
No, the only thing harder than learning is unlearning. And we're going to have to unlearn a lot of things in America if we're going to have another shot work out. I mean, learning's easy.
Well,
you pick stuff up, but unlearning...
We see it all the time. How do you tell... The Federal Reserve isn't federal. There's no reserves. But you tell somebody that, they think you're crazy. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, that's because we measure everything by ourselves. You know, we are the measure of all things. Truth is a product of consensus. You know, and that's not... I mean, that's absurd. That's logically absurd.
At the end of the day, nothing's true. Because our true and inherent freedoms have been ours. We had no right to get rid of them because they are us. They are inherently in our blood and in our bones. We can be cowards and submit, but our freedom, that's our freedom to do.
So you take generation institution ideas, you couple them with generation I'm the center of the universe ideas, and then you couple it with this final generation, which is there's no such thing as right and wrong. Pragmatism is what we must achieve. You've got a Maltese cocktail for society, and it's hucked through the air. And when that sucker hits the pavement, boom, it's going to go. This empire is collapsing. Let come what may. We pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honors. Life and fortune, man, that just sticks a dagger in the heart of those baby boomer values of person. There's this feeling that says, look, we can't say, resist with any and all means necessary, because then we're going to be liable for what other people might do. Okay? That logic, as well-meaning as the person that says that might be, that logic is carrying over the central control of human beings by an elite body idea. Every human being is autonomous. Every human being is responsible for their own actions. This body can't make anybody do anything. Everyone is responsible for their own actions. We can all get together and pledge to one another what we're going to do and muster mutual courage out of like-minded people being alongside you. But that's just more collectivism to say, oh my goodness, if we say the government is breaking the law and somebody goes and starts shooting judges or something, then we're liable for that. No. We don't own that person. We're against the concept of a group of people controlling other people. That's totally contrary. So that person, whoever says that, needs to unlearn. They need to unlearn the model and the mindset of a central body controlling the others.
We legitimize the government. Our freedom is what legitimizes government control. Both for your good and for the good of all men. It was us. All your brothers. It is us. It's not something we possess. Freedom is what we are. We are free people. Resist with any and all means necessary. It is your duty. For we are one.
Here's an adage that you gotta remember, because it'll give you hope every time you see some horrible thing that our government's doing. Governments grow till they pop, and then you get a second shot. That's true. All right. So every time you see somebody going into the balloon of government, the end is getting closer. Just pump that sucker up, man, and have it blast in your face, and let's get on with it.
I don't care who comes into my house and tries to endanger me. I don't care what badge he has, or if he's a criminal, or whoever. As far as I'm concerned, he's threatening my life, he's threatening the life of my family, and if I have the opportunity, I'm going to shoot him.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'm then responsible for anyone that does such a thing? That's ludicrous. The left and right.
Yeah.
They're really good at their talking points.
What kind of dictator do you want? Conservative or liberal?
Let's look at the health debate issue. I'm watching C-SPAN until I can't take it anymore. I change, but I can't keep coming back. and right before they all voted, despite overwhelming opposition to the American people, it was as if if they're reading a script. Somebody handed each side.
What makes you think they're not?
Oh no, I think they are. I know they are. But somebody hands them a script and says, "Here, you're talk, 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 talk."
I agree with it.
You're right on the edge then of indoctrination.
Will...
My teachers would never answer the question, well, why? Why do I need to learn algebra? Because it teaches you to problem solve. But they just shut up and learn it. No, I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to.
Why do you need a hall pass? Because you need to learn how to ask permission.
Exactly.
You know,
there's a lot of conditioning.
If you're going to have a cookie, you've got to share it with everyone.
So,
if I've got a cookie, maybe I'll divide it up and sell it.
Well, are we?
Yeah,
or trade it.
Or
barter,
trade it. Yeah.
Barter. I want the cupcake.
So what that does to a little kid is boom, Marxism at an impressionable age by an authority figure. God gave children to families, not to the state.
Well, I've never been a fan of collectivism. Growing up and having
it's contrary to your nature.
Well, it is, and growing up, but a lot of people seem to like it. There's such a group of people out there that like it, and we in school would have to work in groups. What a silly concept!
Yeah.
When you go out into the workforce, you don't work in groups. You may work as a team to get a project done, but you have your task that is yours and yours alone. And if you don't do it, you're fired.
Yeah.
But in school, I'm working in a group, and I'm doing all the work because they learned real quick that someone will step up and do all the work, and I wanted to get a good grade, so I'm going to do the work and forget it. Fine, here, I'll put your name on it. I'm glad you helped so much. But that's our whole society.
Yeah, this is demoralizing. Communism is actually a really good system for the couple of fat cats at the top, and so is fascism, which we need to define those terms. Communism is where the state owns and controls industry. Okay? Fascism is where private individuals own, but the state controls. So right now, the debate in America is not about freedom in the mainstream debate. It's about fascism versus communism. Should there be private ownership? It's just assumed that there should be public control. It is absolutely contrary to the basic principle of property. Now, let me give you one parting point, and then I got to get to a committee meeting. All right? Don't trust this Congress any more than our current Congress. Let me tell you why. Because power corrupts, and it corrupts your judgment before it corrupts your morals. And people are not designed to control and dominate and manage other people. And there is enough carryover, stuff that hasn't been unlearned by people in this body, that there is a feeling within Continental Congress that we as Continental Congress would do a way better job of the task that ought not to be done, which is to manage and run people's lives. Continental Congress, if Continental Congress tries to be the new dictator, if there's a void and Continental Congress rises up as the new dictator, everyone out there who's watching this right now has just as much of a duty to disobey Continental Congress as they did the U.S. tyrannical federal Congress. Do you hear that? Let me say that again. This body is just as much of a liability to your freedom as the last one because of how it's structured. The only way for governments to function is for them to be absolutely crippled. And that's what the Constitution did. And the Founding Fathers, some of them said, no, we don't even want a government. And God told the Israelites, no, don't have a government. All you need is a militia and a court. And the only time, when you have a dispute between one another, you come before the court. And other than that, there's no government. You don't need it. Everything else, just free market takes care of himself. That was the Old Testament suggestion. All right? Now, the Founding Fathers, what they said is, if we don't create I won't speak to whether I think this was right or not, because I'm not settled on that. But the logic that they gave is, if we don't create a government, somebody will. So the best we can do to preserve liberty in a fallen world is to create a government and instantly cripple it with the Constitution. And that's what it did. But the Constitution is not enforceable. So it's up to us to just learn to never kiss the ring, never bow the knee to Caesar, never commit the highest form of idolatry by putting a man or a group of men or a government in the place of God and natural law. There's a new religion in this country, and the God of this religion is government, and the priests are the legislators, and legislation is the sacrament, and people have a deep, deep, sincere faith in this new God that they learned in school, and they really believe that if the right combination of those rituals, those legislative rituals performed by their priests can be performed, that any problem can be solved. And you know where the fallacy in this is? Is that God never creates an authority that is autonomous from Him. He created natural law, common law, to rule over us. And any time that a government gets out from under that, when they run off and in rebellion, they automatically forfeit, nullify, lose by default their authority. So we have a government that's run amok, that's using arbitrary force, not law. They don't care what the law says. All they care is what they have the power to do, and they don't have any authority. They don't have the authority. They have the power, and those are totally different. Authority and power are totally different. Declaration of Independence says all just powers are derived by the consent of the governed. They don't have and that's any. If you don't consent, it's all voluntarism. It's all about voluntarism. They've forfeited their authority, and we have a duty. We have a duty to disobey. And here's why. Because if we are complacent, if we stand by, if we allow them to intimidate us into silence while they break the laws of the universe, the blood that our government spills is to a certain degree on our hands. And that is not a guilt that I want to bear on my conscience. I will risk the consequences. I will put my family in danger. I will put myself in danger before I will blacken my conscience with a silence about my government's lawless conduct. And I call on everybody out there. That is an individual choice. That's up to you. Nobody can make that for you. You don't need to wait for Continental Congress to tell you to do that. You are a human being who has a moral obligation to your own conscience to do what's right, and nobody can make that decision but you. And I'd ask you to do that right now. Be free. I gotta go.
Well, thanks for your time. This is Schaeffer Cox, delegate from Alaska. If ever there was a reason to visit, if not move there, it's guys like this. And
I'm pretty typical in Alaska.
We're
going to get those articles of association out or compact of mutual support or whatever it is. But for all of you who are out there who made that decision, that document hopefully will be for you. It might be a pansy-mamby thing, and then we're just back to us by ourselves.